I knew that was something I needed to have.
All right, like in Bahar, which is my
There are clearing a House of Information.
None other than one of those very heroes. So, for those who don't know, I'd like for you to take a couple minutes.
Are you originally from the Charleston area?
And a youth in South Carolina.
Right, well, my name's Alex.
The team is when the Emmanuel music to spread love and
Hello. Welcome back, world. How you doing? Hello, world, and welcome back to Real Talk with ReZsaun, when nothing's off limits. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you are here with me, and I appreciate that. I am your host. Now, here on Real Talk with ReZsaun, everything is debatable. So on any given week, we could be discussing anything from sports to music to politics. For those who are new to the show, Real Talk with ReZsaun also has a goal of shining a light on the great things that are happening right here in the Low Country. I know that we are in the midst of a presidential election, and we're talking about everything going on with the election, but I'm here to tell you that we have very important races happening right here in the Low Country that are impacting you and will impact you every single day. And today we have a very, very special guest, and his name is Representative Joe Cunningham. Thank you for joining me, sir.
John, thanks so much for having me, man. It's great to be here.
Great to be here. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I know it's your first time on the show, and I'm really excited to have you. My guests are also excited. As you can see, they're on here. They're watching. So I want to go ahead and get started. Please introduce yourself to the audience for those who may not know who you are.
Yeah, Joe Cunningham, Congressman for South Carolina's 1st Congressional District, first-term representative, running for re-election here this term.
All right. So what made you want to run for office in the first place?
You know, back in 2018, that was the very first election I'd ever ran for. And, you know, I think after the 2016 election and what unfolded, I was tired of the divisiveness. I was tired of that rhetoric. You know, we saw the president just saying anything and doing anything during the election, even past that too. And I didn't want that type of behavior to be ratified or become the new norm. And I feel like we're better as a Low Country, better as a community. You know, you think about some of the things that he said to women and other people, and I think about, you know, my nephews, my nieces, think about my own son, and I don't want that to be the standard that is set by politics or politicians, and I want to change that.
Absolutely. So where are you originally from?
So I grew up in far western Kentucky and then moved down here to Charleston to go to school 20 years ago. It pains me to say that, but
wow. Which school did you go to?
A college, Charleston.
Ah, go Cougs. Okay. Yeah. All right. I had to make sure. Because I'm a college
cool then or what?
I'm a college Charleston grad. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm a college Charleston grad. Yes, sir. Good stuff. So what was your major at College Charleston?
So I went here first couple of years and started studying math and science and wanted to do engineering. And College Charleston didn't offer that. So I started looking around at other schools that did and settled in on Florida Atlantic University to do ocean engineering. So I ended up completing my degree down there at FAU.
Okay, good stuff. Well, at least you started out at College Charleston.
That's it.
Great institution on the planet, by the way. Good stuff. We have lots of College Charleston fans, and we have Kenyatta Grimmage, who just said CFC in the comment section. So we want to make sure we shout that out. He actually interviewed Oprah the other night. That was pretty cool.
Really?
Yeah. I was impressed. Shout out to Kenyatta. So you went to College Charleston. You go to FIU. So where did your journey go from there? FAU. Where do you go from there?
FAU. I worked in the engineering field for about 5 years or so. And then, you know, the recession hit and a lot of engineering firms, a lot of construction, a lot of development just came to a grinding halt, as I'm sure many people remember. And I was laid off. And I say that, you know, that God gave me the opportunity to pursue other things and ended up going to law school, got my law degree, and practiced in the construction litigation field for a number of years here in Charleston after that. And then 2016 happened. And that just kind of upended, you know, I didn't want to. I grew up in the youngest of 5 brothers, big family, and, you know, played a lot of sports and wasn't one just to sit on the sideline.
Yeah.
And I wanted to actually do something about it.
Wow. I love that. And you said you have a son. How old is your son?
Yeah, I got a 2.5-year-old named Boone.
All right.
Yeah.
Good stuff. I seen him in the commercials. And so let's talk a little about. You mentioned the divisiveness of this current election cycle. Do you think this is something that's always been there? We just didn't realize it because it does seem to be extremely negative in this era. What are your thoughts on the way campaigns are sort of being run with the type of rhetoric that's being thrown around?
I think you lead by example, and you look at what's going on from the top down, and the rhetoric and the name calling and things that the president has essentially ratified and led by example with is just set a completely different tone. I mean, politics has always been back and forth, but we're just seeing now, I mean, family members pitted against each other, neighbor pitted against neighbor. We're better than that, and that I think we should strive to be better than that too, and not just accept that as the status quo. And that's what we tried to change in DC.
Absolutely. So since your time in DC, what are some things that you've been able to accomplish in your time that you're really proud of?
Well, we're very happy about the number of bills that we've worked on. I've got 2 of my bills signed into law by President Trump, which is, I think, a testament that this idea of bipartisanship and working with people actually resonates and it's effective. We had a bill that the Great American Outdoors Act, one of the biggest environmental pieces of legislation in half a century, that got signed into law. And another bill to help veterans who are appealing their claims remotely through Skype or Zoom or something like this. That got signed into law. But look, I mean, I've been honored to be able to work with Majority Whip Jim Clyburn in passing a number of bills in the House. We've passed a bill to close the Charleston loophole. We also passed the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which restored the original Voting Rights Act. And it gave the Department of Justice to prosecute those, cases of voter intimidation and other things to stop it before it started. And that's been kind of one of the highlights of my short term up there is working alongside those people that I never thought I would be able to meet, more or less serve with, people like John Lewis. And I took my niece Azzy down to Selma to march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, the last time that I think John Lewis walked across that, and one of the highlights of my last term, though.
Absolutely. Well, speaking about John Lewis, John Lewis is a staunch civil rights activist in the 1960s, early 70s before he became a legislator. With everything that's been going on in the country surrounding Black Lives Matter and things of that nature, what have been your thoughts on the way things have transpired, and how do you think that people who are operating in that realm can get their voices heard on a more substantive level, if not so already?
First answer is vote. Get out and make sure your voice is heard, make sure your vote is counted. But I think that, during this pandemic, it's been tough for everybody. We talked to a lot of people who've lost family members, loved ones, neighbors. And one of the things that this pandemic has done is it's allowed us to kind of slow down and take a look at a lot of the inequities that exist in our society, and how certain, shortcomings disproportionately impact communities of color. In a state in South Carolina where African Americans may make up a core of the state's population. At one time, they're accounting for about half the deaths. Like take, for instance, this conversation we're having today. We're having this conversation because we have the good fortune to have reliable access to rural broadband, to Wi-Fi. And so many communities don't have that. And, we expect, people to, have their kids at home and homeschooling through Zoom or conduct work through online portals. But the fact is, this is a luxury that's not afforded to all, and it's more so disproportionately impacting communities of color. And so I've been working with Majority Whip Jim Clyburn to expand our broadband infrastructures to make sure that every single reach of our state has access to it, because I think that's a key thing. Healthcare is another thing too. We've seen the access to healthcare in rural communities diminish. And I think this pandemic has, like I said, it's brought, these things have always existed, but this pandemic has amplified these shortcomings in a way that nothing else could have. And so I pray that when we get through this, and we're going to get through it, that we don't forget about these inequities and these shortcomings in South Carolina and in the first district.
I think, yeah, you spoke to a very important issue, which is the issue of, minorities and, issues that largely impact minorities being overlooked often by legislators. Has there been more of a concerted effort in the wake of everything that's been going on to identify what problems exist in these largely minority-ish areas, and how do we come to some kind of way to make sure we are they say a rising tide floats all boats.
Yeah.
What has been done specifically to make sure that we're targeting minorities, especially African American people, for better economic infrastructure?
Yeah, I think you look back at some of the destruction that's left in the wake of this pandemic, particularly businesses, small businesses, minority-owned businesses. Paul, the owner of the Rum Cane Bar down off East Bay Street, they closed down. I know Martha Lou's recently shut down on East Bay Street, although I think they're trying to open up another location. It's hard enough for these individuals sometimes to get access to capital to start their own business. And it was even harder during the pandemic to access some of the funds needed to basically keep their businesses open, keep their doors open. And that's why I worked with, in this recent stimulus package, we worked to carve out like $25 billion that would go to these smaller banks, these rural banks that hopefully would serve, these smaller businesses, minority-owned businesses. We had another $25 billion earmarked for the medium-sized banks that would go to the medium-sized businesses. So recognizing that not everybody, has their banker at Bank of America or Wells Fargo that they know on a first-hand basis, that a lot of people are struggling to get access to capital. And so we were trying to level the playing field and making sure that, especially during this pandemic, that everybody's treated fairly and equally.
Yeah, absolutely. I thank you for that. I do want to ask this with everything that's been going on. With it seems to be a larger effort for people to vote. I've been looking at watching the numbers in Texas. The last time I checked, I believe it was over 9 million people in Texas had voted absentee voting, which had been more people voted in Texas in absentee voting in this cycle than voted in the entire cycle, including election day on 2016. When we see things like that happening, that definitely means that there's going to be a rise in voting from African Americans and other minority groups that are usually largely underrepresented. Do you think that could lead to a change in the way legislators view African Americans when it comes to the approach in election season and beyond?
It should. This idea of let's open up the voting booths on election day and election day only is not the best way to operate a democracy. I just left Seacoast Church out in Mount Pleasant, where they're doing in-person absentee for the last day until they open up tomorrow. And the line was probably about twice as long as it was when I was out there last week. People are excited to get out there. People are excited to make their voice heard and their vote count. But you have to realize that a lot of people have, they may be single working mothers. It may be people who can't make it to the voting booth on that particular day. I mean, we're supposed to be we are the best democracy on earth. And but our election system, especially here in South Carolina, where you have politicians who want to make it harder for people to vote instead of easier for people to vote. And so that's why, we've been fighting in the House to level the playing field, to create automatic voter registration, make it easier for people to register to vote. And, what we've seen here in South Carolina by COVID allowing anybody to vote early, this is how it should be in every election cycle. People should be able to vote early, no matter their excuse or whatever. I mean, we've seen the long lines right now. We're going to see long lines tomorrow as well, for single mothers or single parents to be out there waiting hours in line. I mean, see, I pass by parents with their kids, their toddlers. I recognize how hard it is to keep a 2-year-old occupied, and for them to be waiting hours in line to have their vote cast. There's a lot better ways to do this, and opening up the voting earlier for everyone, no matter their excuses, probably a step in the right direction.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So one thing specifically that I care about personally, just because I operate in the mentorship realm in terms of nonprofits, first of all, thank y'all for that money that was allocated towards nonprofits in response to the COVID thing. I think that was a very, 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 very needed and big deal. But in terms of mentorship specifically, has there been any discussions on Capitol Hill in regards to how do we find opportunities to prop up mentoring programs and things like that are benefiting especially the areas where you are talking about single mothers, parents who are having struggles with children, going to prison at young ages and things like that. Has there been any discussions surrounding how important mentorship is and how the government can support it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And, obviously, in these communities that are struggling on all different types of levels, we need to make it easier for people, not harder. And I appreciate that, that everyone who's involved in a mentorship program and, actively trying to make their community a better one. What we can do from the House side is trying to, like I said, level the playing field. In South Carolina, take for instance, healthcare. South Carolina is one of the few states that did not expand Medicaid.
Right.
And that's why I was proud to introduce a bill that urges states to do just that, to expand Medicaid. We need to be making healthcare more affordable. We've passed a number of bills, like I think over a dozen bipartisan bills that drive down the cost of healthcare. But from a legislator on the House side, we're focused on making sure that everybody has, the small business owners, especially minority-owned businesses, have access to that capital that they need, and to make sure that nonprofits like the one you're just talking about are included in these rounds of stimulus, because we recognize there's a lot of value in the work that you all do. And it's important that be recognized. So, on our side, like I said, we're trying to lift people up. We're trying to make it easier for people to vote. We're trying to make, healthcare more affordable and to fix our education system. And there's a lot of progress that needs to be made. We're happy with what we've got done in the first 2 years, but we're excited about what's more to come.
Awesome. So let's talk about what is to come. What does the next term look like for Representative Joe Cunningham should the people of South Carolina decide to reelect you?
I think you meant when they decide to reelect me.
Hey, I'm trying to be unbiased, objective.
I hear you. I'm trying to be a realist here.
Talk that talk. I like it.
Look, I think there's a lot of work to be done, and I think we've seen it. First and foremost, we've got to pull ourselves through this pandemic. We've got to get to the other side, and we need more money for testing. We need more money for PPE. We need another round of PPP loans. We've got to get our business. We've lost so many businesses, small businesses in the Low Country. And these aren't just, think about, these aren't just numbers on a report. These are names, these are faces. I think about, like I said, Paul, who owned the Rum Cane Bar down on East Bay Street. These are businesses that people poured their life savings and this is their dream. And these are landmarks too. Also, Justine's Kitchen just closed down. I used to live above that in college. And these are places where this is what makes us who we are in Charleston. And so getting through this pandemic is first and foremost our biggest concern. Making sure people get back to work, making sure our economy gets back up to the same level it was before, but also making it an equitable economy that benefits everyone, not just the top 1% or top 2%. Healthcare is another big issue. People are spending more and more of their money on healthcare, rising prescription drug costs, doctor's visits. So we got to make sure the ACA is protected and shored up, and it also enhanced too, because there's a lot of ways, bipartisan ways, we can make it more affordable for people. And look, if you save money on prescription drugs or doctor's visits, that's more money in your pocket that can go to other things. Maybe a new car, whatever else you want to put that towards. But we're looking to make families more financially secure, and I think shoring up the ACA is a step in that direction.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you about I want to ask you about, not necessarily about your opponent, but just there have been certain things that have been put out, in the media, the commercials and such about Joe Cunningham. What are some things that maybe you'd want to clear up that maybe somebody watched the commercial may have seen and may not be true?
Yeah, well, anything that's come from the other side, I mean, they're trying to weaponize lies and put that to use. And look, I think people are tired of it. I think people are tired of negativity, and that's why we try to stay above the fray. That's why we've tried to, we've ran a positive campaign talking about the issues, talking about, people at home are like, I'm sick and tired of you blasting another person and tell me what's wrong. Tell me what you're going to do.
Right.
Tell me what you're going to do to make my life easier or make our community a better one. And that's what we've been focused on. You mentioned earlier, my son Boone, and this is about the next generation. This is about, those generations that are going to come behind us, and what kind of world are they going to inherit? Yeah. Are they going to inherit one that's more divisive, more toxic, and an environment that is polluted? Or are we going to preserve these things for them? And we're going to bring integrity and honesty to our nation's capital and instill those virtues that we learned from our parents or our church or our community leaders. It's all about setting that standard, and that's what we've tried to do in this, setting that positive tone, remind people what we've done. I was talking to someone earlier who's over in West Ashley, and I was like, well, it's gonna be nice here in a couple of years when that pedestrian bridge is built between West Ashley and downtown Charleston, and people can commute to work on their bicycle or walk. It can alleviate traffic, and that's money that we help bring back for our community. But like I said, there's still a lot more that needs to be done, and a lot more of those dollars need to come back into our community to make it a better one.
Thank you so much for that. I want to ask you like 2 more questions, then I'll let you go because I know you have a very tight schedule. When it's all said and done, when Joe Cunningham has spent all the time that he spent in Washington, D.C., and now he's back in his rocking chair talking to his grandkids and his great grandkids. Boone's got his own kids and everything, and they're running around the house. What is Grandpa Joe telling? What is he telling the kids that he did for the state of South Carolina?
Look, I think as we sit here now, South Carolina is at the bottom of every list we want to be at the top of, and the top of every list we want to be at the bottom of. Whether it's COVID numbers, or it's our education system, or it's the wages they're paid. I think we have an obligation to make the future a better one for our kids and our grandchildren. And if you can say that you stood up for them, and that you viewed every issue objectively and digested all the facts and tried to make each vote was a sound decision on what would be best for the country and what would be best for our constituents, their children, their grandchildren, I think that's all you can do. And if you're honest and transparent with people, I think they'll continue to trust you and send you back to Washington, D.C. And that's something that I've been mindful of just letting folks know, like, here's how I view it, and here's the decision we're making. And again, South Carolina's got a ways to go in lots of areas, healthcare or education. And so, I want my time to be spent up in D.C. And I'll leave my son every week. 2.5 years old, and it's as they get older, it gets tougher and tougher.
Yeah.
And you can only make those trips if you know that you're fighting for them. And in some ways, you're trying to be a better parent by help guide the way up there so that their future is more secure. And the last 2 years, I feel like I've done exactly that. And we're going to keep on that path and continue to fight for low country families and be their voice in Washington, D.C. And I want to remind your viewers that anybody who's struggling right now or going through a hard time, if they're fighting through different agencies, have problems with the IRS or any federal agency, contact our office. We're here to help. The majority of the work we do is all constituent service. Whether or not you have an issue with IRS, your veterans benefits, Social Security, passport, anything, just reach out to our office. And we're online at cunningham.house.gov, and we're here to help. And like I said, so much of that is what public service is all about.
Yes, sir. Before we close, Amari President's mom said to tell you hello.
That's touching. Amari was a giant.
Yeah.
The first time I met him was at the Martin Luther King breakfast. He came up to me, and the kid looked about 20 years old.
Yes.
Yeah. He's a big kid, and I remember he told me his age. I was shocked. And this is when you think about Amari is very special, and let his mom know that we're all reeling from our community's loss,
yes,
and let alone her loss. But these people come into our lives and they touch us in ways and leave their thumbprint on our community, and that's exactly what Amari did. He's always involved, and he was kind of the gold standard of how involved and active we want our kids to be.
Absolutely.
And I know he made his mom proud, and he certainly made our community proud too. And we miss him dearly.
Absolutely. I want to close with this. Just give you an opportunity one last time, make the voters know why should they vote Representative Joe Cunningham for another term.
Look, if you're tired of the divisiveness and the toxic politics, the partisan politics, the fighting, we're looking to put an end to that. I had never run for office before until this time, but I was fighting to make our community a better one and make this district a better one as well. And there's so much on the lines here tomorrow. A lot of things are on the ballot right now. This is a choice. This election is a choice between those who believe in science versus those who don't. Those who want to make it easier for people to vote, and those who want to make it harder. Those who want to protect healthcare for those with pre-existing conditions, and those who want to rip away your healthcare. And those are the choices that are on the ballot tomorrow. And I want to encourage every person who's not voted to get out and vote. And like I said, make their vote count, make their voice heard. This is what it's all about. This is about democracy. And because you can't be a spectator this time around. You can't complain about it the day after if you didn't get out there and vote. Everybody's got to play their part. And tomorrow's the day.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Representative Joe Cunningham. I really appreciate your time and energy. I wish you the best in the campaign. I can't say who I voted for because that would make me unbiased, but I sort of voted for you. So whatever. But I already voted. I voted.
Everything. It's good. It's good seeing you last weekend too.
Yes, it was definitely good. You came to New Bethel Sounds of Praise, my home church, and it was a great opportunity. And I also wanted to say this. Thank you. And I want to say thank you to every candidate who's made the point of it to speak to people like myself all around the state of South Carolina. I've seen so many platforms with candidates who've been willing to engage directly with the people as opposed to just putting a sign down in the ground and then saying, all right, I've done enough to get their vote. When I come back to DC, because I normally come to DC at least once a year, I'd love to come to the office and sit down with you and talk to you a little bit more about my nonprofit and how things we're doing in the community.
I look forward to it.
Thank you so much. You guys have a great day. I'm going to go ahead and do my close if that's okay. All right, thank you to Representative Joe Cunningham. I know he's busy, so if he has to go, I understand. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody who watched. I'm not going to do a long close. Just make sure you subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed this video. If you like interviews of this nature, I have lots of them. This is actually 122 that I do with Representative Joe Cunningham. So if you like that kind of thing, if you are in the process of voting, if you have not voted yet, make sure you go to www.scvotes.org and find out your polling station, find out where you need to be. Make sure you know who's on the ballot. Make yourself educated about it so you will know who you're voting for, what they stand for, and even check their voting record. If you don't know how to do any of those things, find somebody who's intelligent. I know several people that I could refer you to. If you don't know of anybody who can, give you some good advice, it don't have to be me, it can be somebody else. But just make sure you get educated. An uneducated voter is kind of a useless voter, going to be honest with you. So just make sure that you take the time that it takes to go out and find it. Also, like I said, make sure you find your polling station, www.scvotes.org. My name is ReZsaun Lewis, and this has been Real Talk with ReZsaun. Always remember that God is everything, and without him, we are nothing, so never forget where your help comes from. And if a man doesn't stand for something, he's bound to fall for anything. Now that is Real Talk. Make sure you vote, y'all. Peace.